From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is Ag Day.
Concern over avian flu is continuing to grow, and now it may be a bigger problem than first thought.
It appears to be a nationwide problem.
Now USDA is taking additional steps to try and stop the spread.
We've come together to announce a series of actions.
The latest on what researchers have uncovered, what it means for the nation's milk supply, and what all producers need to know.
Making sure that we do our best as the dairy industry to maintain and protect the health of our dairy cattle in all 50 states.
We're following the latest on this developing story right now on Ag Day.
Ag Day, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when blood, sweat, and tears meet rain, wind, and sun. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. We're following multiple new developments about the outbreak of avian flu in dairy cattle. First, we've learned the outbreak is continuing to spread, with USDA now ordering new testing on dairy cattle. It's also requiring mandatory testing for the interstate movement of dairy cattle across the country. It comes after health officials say remnants of the H5N1 virus were found in milk commonly sold in grocery stores. However, they say the dead viral particles don't make people sick and continue to stress the milk supply is safe. The Farm Journal team continuing to address all aspects of this. We begin with Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack addressing the news media with the actions USDA is taking to protect the livestock industry from the virus. Ag Day's Michelle Rook joins me now, and Michelle, USDA is issuing new requirements for the dairy industry.
Clinton, USDA announced it's issuing a federal order with a two-pronged approach to stop the spread of HPAI or H5N1 in dairy cattle and to develop a baseline for limiting transmission. Now, it includes mandatory testing prior to interstate movement, and it goes into effect Monday, April 29th. USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack outlined the federal order, which requires that prior to interstate movement, all lactating dairy cattle must receive a negative test for the influenza A virus at an approved National Animal Health Laboratory Network lab. This will not supersede state import requirements.
The mandatory testing for interstate movement of dairy cattle involves, prior to interstate movement, dairy cattle will be required to receive a negative test for influenza A virus at an approved National Animal Health Laboratory Network laboratory. Owners of herds in which dairy cows test positive for interstate movement will be required to provide biological information, including animal movement tracing. And dairy cattle that does in fact move interstate will have to adhere to the conditions established by APHIS in the guidance that will be published tomorrow.
Any positive cases will require a 30-day waiting period before retesting. Vilsack says testing will start with lactating dairy cows, but will then be expanded to all cattle. Owners of herds in which dairy cattle test positive will be required to provide epidemiological information, including movement tracing. And all labs and state vets must report testing results to APHIS.
The mandatory reporting really applies to all cattle. Laboratories and state veterinarians are required to report any positive influenza A finding in livestock to USDA APHIS so that we are able to obtain information as quickly as possible.
Vilsack says these steps are necessary after confirming the virus is spread from birds to cows and from cow to cow. However, they found no changes in the virus, making it more transmissible to or between people. APHIS will be paying for the additional testing, and the dairy industry stands by these requirements.
So we really believe that following the recommendations and requirements that come out from our federal and state animal health officials are appropriate. They are the brain trust for our response to this and making sure that we do our best as the dairy industry to maintain and protect the health of our dairy cattle in all 50 states.
He says FDA and the industry will also be increasing testing throughout the food chain.
The Food and Drug Administration, in their announcement yesterday, indicates that they are working with USDA and land-grant universities and others to look at the further impacts of pasteurization that is likely to occur at a variety of levels, including from the farm level and perhaps into additional retail products.
Secretary Vilsack stressed the detection of virus fragments in milk in the commercial supply came from asymptomatic cows with the illness. However, these fragments are not live or infectious after pasteurization or cooking, making meat and milk safe to eat. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for Ag Day.
All right, thanks, Michelle. The larger issue for the ag industry right now, the virus is showing up in more samples. Officials say that means the infection in dairy herds may be more widespread than originally thought and could have started even earlier. The New York Times reporting the outbreak may have started in January or possibly December. It spoke with an evolutionary biologist at the University of Arizona, Dr. Michael Werby, telling the Times a single spillover event months ago from birds to cow set off the outbreak, and that, quote, this really does look like a single introduction, end quote. Now, last month, we received the first confirmation that dairy cattle in Texas and Kansas had tested positive for the virus that is commonly spread by wild birds. The virus now confirmed in more than 24 dairy herds across 8 states and 1 dairy worker in Texas. Farm Journal's Tyne Morgan speaking with a researcher at The Ohio State University, one of the labs actively testing retail milk samples for the virus.
We've tested 150 samples. 58 of those have tested positive to date.
Dr. Bowman reiterating to Tyne that no live virus has been found in the milk that they've tested, only parts of the viral RNA or genetic material, describing how the testing was conducted.
We've purchased milk from in 6 different states. The processing plant codes on those 58 positives represent 10 different states the milk was processed in. And those span a wide breadth of the U.S. So it's appears to be a nationwide problem. This is not just a localized issue that we're seeing in our neck of the woods.
They then sent those on to a lab at St. Jude Children's Hospital, which confirmed the virus was not live. Bowman compares it to finding DNA at a crime scene. It shows evidence the virus was in the milk, but it's no longer active, and it was likely killed in the pasteurization process.
Just viral RNA is not going to make people sick. That's not infectious. That's not a concern.
The Centers for Disease Control reaching out to Farm Journal in regards to concerns about the human health aspect of this. A senior CDC official telling us that the agency regularly scans for unusual illness, and right now they are seeing nothing unusual in respect to flu activity. They say they look for a host of flu-like symptoms by looking at people coming into emergency rooms, care systems, and other health agencies. Now, the CDC continuing to say the overall assessment and risk to human health remains low for avian flu. And New York has become the latest state to bar imports of animals from states impacted by H5N1. The State Department of Ag saying while no cases in livestock in the New York area have been detected to date, the temporary import requirements will help ensure animals coming into the state are healthy. At least 22 states have now issued restrictions on the importation of dairy cattle. Also from USDA, it is officially announcing new nutrition standards for school meals. The new standards will limit added sugars for the first time. Those limits on foods such as cereal, yogurt, and flavored milk will start next year. And by 2027, added sugars will be limited to no more than 10% of total calories per week in school meals. The National Milk Producers Federation thanking USDA for keeping low-fat flavored milk in schools under the program. The new rule also trims sodium in kids' meals. Officials say the update will also make it easier for schools to access locally sourced products benefiting both schools and the local economy. The program serves breakfast to more than 15 million students and lunch to nearly 30 million children each day. Something else we're keeping watch on, the weather, with so many farmers looking to get some planting done while the threat for severe weather is continuing to expand. Meteorologist Martin Lormore joins us with an update.
Yeah, we're going to be watching as we watch for more of these systems moving through parts of the country. It's going to be getting a little bit soggy across, especially the central and southern plains across the Oklahoma region. Be watching as these showers do move through with this little ridge. It's going to be pushing its way across the country with this associated low pressure system. Now, you can see quite a bit of rain out toward the Rockies, a couple of those higher elevations. Yeah, you're going to be seeing some of that snowfall still coming in across those highest elevations of the Rockies as we watch this low pressure make its way through, noticing a good majority of the nation seeing a lot of these showers. Some of these could be severe for our Thursday and Friday, especially across the southern and central plains. So stay tuned with us. We'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. As we get throughout the rest of that Friday, noticing this cold front sweeping across the nation, making its way into the Great Lakes. And by the Sunday into Monday, there's more of those showers still sweeping their way across the southern and central plains. This low pressure will eventually move its way across the eastern part of the country. We'll be watching this one pretty closely, as it could be giving us multiple days seeing that possibility of severe weather. And sunny skies in Michigan are starting to get more of the planters rolling. Robert Fries, a farmer that we do check in frequently with, sharing this video with us. He farms near Lansing, Michigan, and it looks like a bit of a busy day out there. So hope all of you farmers are staying busy, of course. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Wheat markets continue to soar while cattle and milk markets continue to digest the latest information from USDA about H5N1. We'll talk all the prices coming up next. And later, the best dogs in the business. And no, we aren't talking farm dogs. We're talking hot dogs in the country.
Ag Day is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels provides a 13 bushel advantage per acre in no-till and a 7 bushel advantage per acre in conventional. Do you have enough room in your bin to switch to the Germinator?
An update on the investigation into accounting practices at Archer Daniels Midland. ADM says its former CFO has agreed to resign. Vikram Luthan agreeing to resign effective September 30th. He was suspended back in January following an investigation by the SEC and the Department of Justice into the company's accounting practices. News of the probe wiping out $8.8 billion in market value in a single day. ADM has said it is cooperating, and the announcement of Luther's departure is a step toward business as usual. Corn futures pulled back after a 3-day winning streak. Ag Day's Michelle Rook is back with more in markets now.
Wednesday's market closes mostly lower in livestock, mixed in the grains. Darren Newsom is joining us with bar chart. Darren, wheat has been on like a 5-day tear. Is this anything more than short covering, or are there really some perceived production concerns?
To me, this is nothing more than a short covering move. You've got funds who at the last CFTC commitments Treasury report still holding about 63,000 net short futures. And, we can look at the 3 key fundamental reads on real fundamentals, which is cash index, which is basis, and future spreads. And they're all 3 incredibly bearish. They haven't changed. So I see this as a non-commercial play right now. Doesn't mean that it isn't going up, because it certainly is. But I just don't see it as fundamentally driven. And when you get that kind of divergence, sooner or later, the rubber band snaps, and usually it snaps back to fundamentals.
So corn and soybeans have been following wheat higher, not able to do it on Wednesday. Are the funds done covering shorts over in those 2 markets, or did we just run up into chart resistance, or what?
I think a little bit of both. It would not surprise me over the coming weeks if funds do continue to cover some of their shorts. Again, they're holding substantial positions, but there's really no fundamental reason to get excited about this. We're seeing some seasonal pickup in demand for corn and a seasonal slowdown in demand for soybeans. These things we're used to by now. Also on the soybean front, we're going to get our next round of weekly export sales and shipments. And the real key here is total marketing year shipments. And as of last week's report, they were still running 200 million bushels behind what the shipment pace was telling us we're going to be total exports. So, there's a lot of business to do yet. And if it doesn't happen, that just means we're going to come up that much shorter of what we shipped out last year.
And a setback in cattle, routine profit taking, or chasing HPAI headlines again?
I think you're probably right, Michelle. I think there is some chasing of headlines. We certainly saw it probably in the Johnny Come Lately spec traders who, foolishly jumped in after the cattle on feed report, since, most traders already knew by watching the markets in March what happened. But yeah, so those folks who jumped in on Monday, early Tuesday, probably looking to get out.
Thanks for joining us, Darren Newsom with Bar Chart. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
To get in touch with Darren, send him an email at analysis@darrennewsom.com or give him a call at 402-669-0210.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rook on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
Yeah, we're looking at severe risk over the next several days, kind of jumping straight from winter into spring with these frontal systems. This one's going to be across parts of western Oklahoma, western Texas, and into parts of western Kansas where that highest threat level is. We've seen that possibility of all forms of severe weather, damaging winds, large hail. Of course, the heavy rainfall, it could cause some flash flooding, and of course, the possibility of a handful of those tornadoes, especially in this red area. But this is going to eventually shift over to the east. It's going to center itself over across the Oklahoma area and all the way up into parts of Iowa. So this will fall off a little bit on that severe risk, but still looking at that possibility for several of those severe storms on our Friday. It is something that's going to be watching over the next several days. So precipitation will be bringing in quite a bit of that as we head throughout our weekend, noticing several inches again across that parts of southwest Missouri, all the way up and towards parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and even into Iowa. So plenty of rainfall will be coming down, and it will keep that drought monitor very low across most of the nation. And also the possibility with these next couple of systems, some more of that snowfall. Granted, limited to the very highest levels of the Rockies, Cascades, and Sierra Nevadas over the next several days. And even then, not expecting much snow to really be falling as we get into that next couple of days with this system. So watch as this jet stream does move through. There's that low pressure right there. It's going to be pulling its way through, bringing in rain chances, but noticing this ridge of high pressure to our east. This right here will keep us very warm in the southeast and most of the eastern seaboard. This low will lift, and eventually we're going to be seeing warm temperatures across most, if not all, the nation. Lone exception out toward the Pacific Northwest, where they will be seeing that next low moving its way through. It will cool things down as we get into that next month. Huntsville, Arkansas, it's going to be pretty stormy. Temperatures only around the low 60s. Cynthiana, Kentucky, looking pretty good, mostly sunny, high of 64. And finally, Niihau, Hawaii, nice and warm, high 80 degrees.
The Office of Management and Budget has completed its review of a proposed USDA rule that would require visually and electronically readable identification, or EID, tags for cattle and bison. The USDA says the rule aims to enhance animal identification and traceability during disease outbreaks. However, the proposal has sparked controversy, including with the Livestock Marketing Association, which raised concerns about the financial burden the rule would impose on the industry. The LMA highlighting that transitioning to the EID system could be nearly 9 times more costly than the current low-cost options, adding while USDA currently provides certain identification devices at no cost, the proposed rule could shift significant expenses onto producers. Now, it's reported a gray wolf was found dead in Larimer County, Colorado. There are reports it was part of a group of wolves that were reintroduced into the state back in December. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is investigating the death since the animal is listed under the Endangered Species Act. But it says preliminary evidence suggests the wolf died of natural causes. It marks the second time a wolf has been found dead in the state recently. One was found deceased earlier this month in Elbert County, but it was not part of the reintroduction group. There have reportedly been 6 confirmed livestock deaths because of wolves in the state so far this year. At least one of the wolves involved in the livestock deaths were part of the reintroduced animals that came from Oregon. Spring is sprung and grilling season is off and running. We'll tackle a fan favorite, the hot dog, and which brand has the very best in the business in the country next. Where can you get the best hot dogs in the world? Maybe you're thinking of your favorite baseball park or even the ones in your fridge, but one place in Mexico wants to lay claim to the title. Sonora State in Mexico claims it has the best dogs, but they don't call them hot dogs there. They call them doggos. It said that the Sonoran hot dog is an adaptation of the classic American hot dog with unique flavors and traditions. They are larger with a sweet bun, have a bacon-wrapped sausage, and some add jalapeno sauce, stuffed chili peppers, and even guacamole. It said the fusion of flavors and culinary techniques have led the Sonoran dog to gain notable recognition among national and international customers. And if you're looking to try one, head to Arizona, where the dog has become a popular street food item with several food stands, trucks, and restaurants selling them across the state. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at Ag Day, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.